Ink therapy, ink therapy, ink therapy, ink therapy.
Welcome to the therapy session. This is David Yancey III, aka DY3. We're going to be talking about free game for the tattoo industry. So here we go. First, let's talk about the difference between working in a private studio and working in a tattoo shop. There's different advantages for working in both. From my experience, when I worked in a private studio, it was cool, but I felt like I was separate from the rest of the tattoo industry, especially like my peers. So I felt like I was growing, but then I felt like I was also limiting myself from growing as much as I possibly could. When you work in a tattoo studio, you're working around other artists, so that naturally causes you to push yourself to want to be better. And then inside of a tattoo studio, you get more opportunity to do other styles of tattoos and not just your usual style of tattooing. So that's one of the, you know, advantages of working in the studio versus working in the shop. There are other benefits, of course, like if you're working in a private studio, you kind of get to set your own schedule, but the same thing can work as if you're working in a shop. It all depends on how that shop operates. Each person can set their own hours, but normally for a shop, they have their hours. So, working in a private studio, you can set your own hours and come and go as you please. So that's one thing about working in a private studio. Private studio, you have a little bit less distractions. I know here at Ink Therapy, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of walk-ins. There's a lot of outside noises from, artists working with their clients and laughing and joking. It can be a distraction a tad bit if you're not used to that. So that's just one of the differences of working inside of a tattoo studio and working inside of a tattoo shop. But, I think the greatest thing about working inside of a studio, or say the thing that's great about working inside a tattoo shop, especially if the shop is providing promotion for the artist and is bringing in a lot of clientele for the artist and also doing a lot of outreach inside of the community, that broadens the reach of each of the artists that's inside of the shop. It gives them a broader opportunity to make their clientele grow. But the shop is doing a lot more outreach inside of the community, doing community events, promoting on like Google, Instagram, and Facebook, and, just doing different flash events and holiday events. That does broaden a huge reach for the artists that are involved in the shop that you wouldn't get in a private studio. There are also some, you know, illegal ways to go about it. And that being, like if you're working in a home studio and, you're not properly licensed and things like that, uh, that could go either good or bad. But the thing about working on your own is that you keep 100% of the profits, and the risk is higher. So just in case, like if the health department gets involved, then that's all on you. There could be a lot of penalties for that. But once again, you're kind of working on your own, and you set your own schedule and you work at your own risk. There's always positives and negatives to every different venture. I just feel like working in a shop versus working in a studio or a home studio it's a little bit safer environment. It's an environment that's nurturing for growing as an artist, nurturing for the artist to be able to get a good core foundation on their career and later on build that clientele. Because that's the other thing is, if an artist that is just now starting and they want to do, a private studio or work from home, they don't have that big of a clientele. So for them to fill up their books and stay booked out will be a lot harder for somebody that work in the shop where they're constantly getting walk-ins and constantly getting promoted and things like that, and getting seen. So I would recommend first, like especially newer art, or like if you're moving into an area, that establish yourself in a shop, build your clientele, and then once you feel like your clientele is at that point where like, hey, I want to venture off and do my own thing, then you'll feel a lot more comfortable with doing that. So that's my recommendation. Apprenticeships. Should apprenticeships be paid or given? Should they be free or should you have to earn for them? Well, I feel like apprenticeship should be earned, not given. For me as an artist, I had to go through apprenticeship. I did pay a fee and, I worked with the artist for a year. After that year, I got my license and continued my career. 8 years into the game, that license have opened a lot of doors for me, allowed me to open up a shop, allowed me to go to conventions, allowed me to actually apprentice people. After being licensed for 3 years, Tennessee law is that you're able to start apprenticing. So, you know, that piece of paper goes a long way. And I was taught early on that license are important. No one can take away license that you've earned. So I really feel strongly about like get your license. Some places I have heard they give free apprenticeships, but then I've also heard that people got screwed out of apprenticeships. They work with the artist and, for a period of time and never got a license. So what I say is if you're apprentice and if you're, uh, if you're a person that is interested in wanting to get a tattoo license, you should have a good portfolio, talk to a licensed artist that is eligible to apprentice you, talk to them, maybe go get a tattoo by them, get a vibe with them, see how, they work. And also, you know, think about like, what you're going to have to commit because it's a 1 year thing. And that's just for Tennessee. It's a 1 year commitment. But within that, before you even make that commitment between you and the artist, you have to go get your apprenticeship license first. That is key. I've heard people talking about, yeah, I'm apprenticing, but they don't even have an apprenticeship license. With getting your apprenticeship license at the health department, that initiates that start of your first year. So as soon as that paperwork is submitted to the health department, then it is understood that you are apprenticing under that person, and that is when the start of your years of your apprenticeship license starts. So, if you don't have that apprenticeship license, then you're just wasting time. Also, for my apprentices, I offer a lot. A lot goes on to what I give for them. Apprenticeships aren't given, they're earned. For all of my apprentices that have worked with me and that are working for me, there is a system set up for them to grow, for them to learn. Before the year ends, they have to understand all the different core styles of tattooing, which is fine line all the way to Japanese traditional. They have to have completed flash sheets that they have drawn of each of the different styles. They have to understand sanitation. They have to understand how tattoo business works. And that's one thing that I instill in all my apprentices is actually how the tattoo industry works and how a business works. So just in case they eventually want to go open their own studio, they understand all the guidelines on how a tattoo shop should work. I talk to my apprentices about pricing, how to talk to clientele, how to book. There's a lot that goes on in the tattoo industry, and all of that needs to be established within the first year. Also, professionalism and social media. Social media is a big thing. I really, really push social media on them because one thing is doing a tattoo, but then the other thing is promoting the tattoo. And nowadays, it isn't just about the tattoo, it's about the artist. So, understanding that all of these things matter. For tattooing, it starts off like allow the apprentice to you know, tattoo their friends, tattoo their family, tattoo themselves, practice on fake skin. Once all of that is established and they see how well they go, it could be about 6 months or however long it takes for them to like, okay, I feel confident, they feel confident with tattooing, then we can move them on to clients. And for the clients, we establish that, hey, this is an apprentice and we talk about everything and it's understood that they're getting tattooed by apprentice and then they're able to start understanding on how that flow goes. And it's just something to establish early on to understand how tattooing works. I feel like if a person stays on fake skin for a year or two and only tattoos fake skin, by the time they start tattooing real skin, they're going to be damaging skin, tearing skin up. So I feel like it's important for them to be able to understand what real skin feels like. So next, we're going to talk about coils versus rotary machine. Loyal to the coil. I was that guy for a long time. I've been slowly transitioning over to the rotary machine, but I was loyal to the coil. And I still will pick up my coil machine especially if it's bolder lines or bigger pieces. I feel like a coil would definitely put that ink into the skin better. But nowadays, I love my Bishop One. I love my FK Iron. I have both of those machines. One does different techniques better than the other. I use my Bishop shader for shading, to get a smoother shading, to work on my portraits and to get smoother blends. And then I use my FK Iron Flux Max, 4.2 stroke, I believe. It allows me to do almost any tattoo I need to do. I love both of those machines. They're really, really convenient, but it's more of a longevity of me tattooing. I had tattooed with coils for almost 6 years, and I felt like the coils were starting to give me arthritis in my wrist and my hand. And since I've slowly transitioned away from there, it has helped my arthritis and, that pain in my hand go away with having something that isn't so abrasive. So, that's just something I had to consider. And to each their own. I still love my coils. I had got blood money irons, coils, and man, those things, I love those machines. So yeah, loyal to the coil rotary machines is really, it's up to you how you feel and what works for you. The biggest thing about coils and rotaries, and I always say this to anybody that wants to get into the tattoo industry, you have to not go cheap. You have to do your research on the machine that you're going to use. Talk to other people that use those machines and find out what works best for you. But I always say, don't go cheap. If you use a cheap machine, you're going to be working backwards. You're going to be wondering why my lines aren't going in, why my shading looks like that. And the bottom line is because it's a cheap machine. If you get something good, you work up and you build and you learn how to use that machine, then the sky's the limit. You're going to get as good as you possibly can, and there's nothing going to be holding you back from learning those techniques and putting good tattoos on people, because you got the best machine. Going to use the best tattoo machines. You're going to use the best inks. And you're going to use the best needles. Can't go cheap on those things because people are paying good money, and you can't waste people's time and money by going cheap. If you want good tattoos, you have to use good equipment. All right. Sobriety in the tattoo industry. For me, I've been sober 10 years. It has been a journey. I've been in shops where everybody was getting high, some artists coming in drunk, some artists doing harder drugs and doing crazy tattoos on people, and I've seen it. I've seen it all the way around. And I look at it like, wow, I'm just so grateful that I'm not in that place, because I was that guy. I never tattooed high, but I know what it is to be, not in your right mind, trying to do a job. And you think you're doing a good job, but you're so high that you can't realize that you're messing up. Some people are able to do it. I'm not against people that, are high on the job. For me, I want to bring that professionalism where the client can guarantee that I'm doing my best job. And I say that just because, I started each day going in knowing that today I'm going to give it my best. Today that I am not going to pick up or use any drugs or get drunk. And today that I'm going to go do my job the best that I possibly can. And knowing that, I feel that people that work with me, people that get tattooed by me, know that at least David is going to be in his right mind to be able to do the best job that he possibly can. There's a lot of things that go along with, sobriety in the tattoo industry, going to, after parties or going to events with the tattoo artists. And, people like to drink and, like to smoke, and that's fine. I'm all about that. I love to be around, creatives and artists in their natural, habit where they're having fun and able to do that. I realize for me, I can't do that, because after all the fun and games, I'm still wanting to be in that same state of mind. And that goes on for days, binging out. And it's important to know that. It's important to realize that, like, I don't have to be that person, and encourage others that, if you feel like you have a problem with drinking or drugging, there's other ways out there that you can get help, that you don't have to be that person, and that you can work on yourself, where you can be the best potential artist that you possibly can be. Because I feel like a lot of those are like crutches. A lot of those habits hold people back from being their best self. And I get it. Some people deal with depression. I feel like some people aren't able to cope without those those drugs and things like that. And I understand I was that person too. You know, I self-medicated for a long time. I'm grateful for 10 years of sobriety. I feel like without sobriety, I would never have opened up ink therapy. I feel like I would never be able to be the artist or, the boss or the son or uncle or just somebody could confide in if I wasn't sober. And yeah, I'm grateful for sobriety. It allows me to put my best self out there in the world. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. We talked about apprenticeships. I feel like you got to earn your spot, put that work in, invest into your career. I always say invest in yourself. you you're going to make yourself win. Don't rely on other people to give it to you. Invest in yourself, build your career, and be the best person that you possibly can be, and watch how successful you be. Mastering your craft, whatever tool that helps you master your craft, so be it. If you're loyal to the coil, run that coil machine. Get those lines in there, get that shading in there, make the best tattoo you possibly can. If you're down with the rotary, go all the way in. Whatever makes you do the best tattoo that you possibly can do that tattoo, y'all. I'm not against coils or rotary. Right now, I feel like for my longevity in the tattoo career, I feel like rotaries are more supportive for what I got going on now. The other thing is staying grounded. There's nothing wrong with being so sober. There's nothing wrong with working on yourself. There's nothing wrong with trying to be your best self. If that means that like you have to not be around those certain group of people that you're used to hanging around with, so be it. Lean into the artwork, lean into the tattoos, lean into understanding the craft and the industry and the business. Build your own brand. Focus that energy into that. Because what alcohol and drugs want to do is they want to take that energy away from what you're building. Don't let that happen. Stay grounded, stay focused. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. This has been the therapy session. If you like this podcast, subscribe. We got a lot of great guests coming. If you know somebody that needs some therapy, tell them about the page. Tell them to subscribe. Yo, see y'all.